All right. Thanks for coming. And before I begin, I just want to say, give a special thanks to Jane.com for the food and for just having this awesome place for us to meet. So it really helps when we can bring a community together from all different areas and walks of life and levels, and learn this stuff together, because that's what we're doing. So if anyone has a laptop and wants to follow along, you can go to this little URL at the bottom. But otherwise, let's just jump right in. So my name's Dave Alger, and I work at Family Search right now. And I have this thing where I figured out that with CSS, you can transition a dash line with a really big gap that's so big that the line's not there. And then you can transition it to zero gap, and you get this really cool drawing effect. So every place I've ever worked, I kind of take the logo and do it. And you get this nice little, no JavaScript at all, and you get this nice little spinner thing. A lot of the stuff we're going to be doing is right here in CodePen. So, and I also wanted to mention Canopy. They write some tax software, and they're a local company with native web components in production. So thank you, Canopy. It's always nice to see people go blaze the trail, and they're doing some really awesome stuff. So you could check them out on GitHub, and they share all their stuff here. There's this really cool single SPA example where I'll just show the demo really quickly. They made it possible to pretty much bring all the different frameworks on the page at the same time in an easy way. So like you could see some examples of these are all living on the page at the same time thanks to their native web glue. Okay. So, you might not have noticed just by looking, but this thing right here is a native web component. It's a Dave Alger. So let's inspect it and see what it looks like. So pay no attention to that man behind the shadow root, but here it is. There's a Dave Alger on the page, and there's no frameworks. Well, there's probably a framework for slides, but let's, I wasn't going to do this, but let's just see. What if we put 2 Dave Algers on the page? Do I dare? Oh. So, up until now, we've had all of these DOM elements that we could use. Div, buttons, etc. But we were never really free to make our own. And I think that this is the year where we might actually get this dream might actually become a reality. So I'm going to try and make the case that we're ready to start building native web components and native apps. And so what I've done is pretty much on each slide they come in groups of 3. So before I begin, I was going to go over 3 of the top reasons, 3 of the top dreams every component has. And I got a lot of this information from Roy Fielding. He was one of the pioneers of like HTTP and came up with the REST protocol that I'm sure you're all familiar with. But the first dream every component has is composability. The system must be prepared for gradual and fragmented change where old and new implementations coexist. And if you look this concept up, you'll see that right here it says, a highly composable system provides recombinant components that can be selected and assembled in various combinations. So I like to think of Lego bricks, Lego. So Lego blocks are really composable, but could you imagine if every year or sometimes every 6 months there was a new format of sticking Legos together? And that's kind of where we've been at. I tried to come up with a Easter analogy since it's that time of year, and the best one I could come up with, and I don't know if this will work, but I'll just do it. So you've all heard, don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? That seems like good advice. But that's what we've been doing, sort of. We've been reinventing the wheel over and over again. So
it's just because we love it. So
yeah. Because we've only all ever made one data grid, right? We've never made another one. Like, wouldn't it be great if you could just make a data grid once and for all? I would love that. So let's see the next. The next dream of every component is extensibility, and this is building it in such a way that it's not going to be the end of the world if you need to add something new in the future. And the final one, reusability. And this is so important, kind of like that last example. If you make a Dave Alger, you should just be able to put as many on the page as you want, and they shouldn't like, oh, sorry, I don't know what to do because there's already a data. And you should be able to reuse them anywhere. So is this kind of thing even possible? Well, I was going to say that it's not new. It's not a new concept. In fact, as long as JavaScript's been around, we've been trying to do this. Now, who's familiar with who's built a jQuery plugin? About at least half of the people who have built the jQuery plugin. jQuery had a good run. I mean, that thing, there was a point in time where like JavaScript and jQuery were pretty much the same, they're interchangeable. And now it's like a swear word, like just everyone's trying to get rid of jQuery. But it had a good run. And so, yeah, I built a lot of jQuery plugins that could act as a component. Then some guy at Google does this experiment one day, and he's like, okay, I'm just going to try something and see what happens. And then it got out somehow, and then a lot of people started doing it, but nobody really knew what was going on. And then over time, we got the ability to create our own directives. And this took off really well, I think because in like that last example where you have a component on the page that says what it is, date picker. If you have something like that, you can look at the document object model and kind of guess what this thing is going to do, even knowing none of the code behind it. And finally, I would say this is the winner. React. They just went straight in with components. They do things really, really well. And so one of the ways I measure my personal way of measuring a framework's viability is where the components are, which one has the most components that are used on the web. You know how like Google's search algorithm just counts the links to your page and, oh, that must be an important page because so many are linking to it. Well, you can go out and just, how many people on the web are using this React component or that kind of thing. And so it was January 2016, and I didn't go back, I couldn't look this up, but when I tracked this like on GitHub, so the beginning of last year, React passed Angular. So there were more Angular components up until January 2016. Now React is by far the front runner in this space. And I'm here today to say, well, who cares if we have all these awesome React components? Let's start over and build them all again. So let's see if I can make that case. We'll see. Oh, real quick, I'll just show you this. I did look up these Google Trends, and this green line at the top is actually jQuery, and you can see how powerful that was because it solved a real problem. But it's been slowly going down over time, and then you can see here where Angular is the blue one, and then this red one is React. But any guesses as to what these green dips are? It looks like it's all around Christmas time, so it's like making a Christmas, like, what? People don't jQuery at Christmas. People don't jQuery at Christmas. Anyway, so let's go. I wanted to, last weekend, I thought it would be a really good idea to just test the smallest single page app I could think of. And so maybe I got through 3 or 4. I didn't get through Angular 2, which I really wanted to get through, but it just wasn't working. But I started with baseline HTML and then took a snapshot of the performance. And you can kind of see that, like, it's almost instant. Is anyone here old enough to remember what a WYSIWYG is? You know what that is? What you see is what you get. When those things first came out, it was like, cool, I don't have to learn all the tags. I could just, make stuff bold and big. And so I was never like that excited about WYSIWYGs, and I didn't realize why until I opened up a WYSIWYG and I saved an empty blank page, and it was like 2,000 characters. Now, if I also save an empty document with 0 characters, .html, and open it up in the browser, they look the same. So I was like, okay. And it was worse than that. If I made a tag and then deleted it and then made it a different color, all this residue just build up, but still it was a blank page. So I like to get as minimal stuff on the page and then see what, take a baseline. And so if you click here and look at this web app, this is a single page app, you'll see that it's just a div that says hi. That's so nice. I didn't want to just use a text element, so I had to have at least one element. In this case, it's just a div that says hi. Okay, so let's look at React. Now, React is really, really good because, look, we're talking 45 milliseconds, but compared to a straight up div that says hi and no script, it's not free. So it's good, but it's not free, and you can see that here. And finally, this is the native web component version. And if I click on this, we won't look at all the profiling and stuff, but I did the measurements all at the same time. You'll see it's attached to the shadow root. It's got a template. It's got the script. And it's basically this so performance. Oh, this was kind of an interesting thing with this experiment. See this 7 milliseconds of other? You'd have to subtract that from here, so there's a little bit more than that 7 milliseconds of other, maybe attaching to the shadow DOM or whatever, but this little gray other blip right here, does anyone want to guess what that little green thing is? Sorry, I'm a data nerd, I like this kind of stuff. That is Chrome looking for the favicon. And it does it whether you tell it to or not. It just sees if there's one in the root. And in order to convince you to use native web components and that now is the time to do it, I'm going to start by telling you why not to do it. So IE11 polyfills. Does anyone have to support IE11 still in your... So that last little performance test, it's like, cool, I could have a native single page app with like 0 things on the page. I don't have to type anything, and I have a native single page web app. I mean, how cool is that? But IE11, so now I don't have one. So that's probably my number 1 reason. The number 2 is browsers have opinions. So as early as the middle of last year, so 2016 around June or July, there's a blog post. Someone at Microsoft was making the case for iframes. Oh, you don't need shadow roots. The way you encapsulate styles and stuff is in an iframe. Duh. Oh man, I wanted to reply to that article, but if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. Iframe's also a swear word, by the way. And I put this last, but it's actually a pretty good reason. MyThing.js is fine. React is really good. And I have the components already working and the grid's doing what I need it to do. Why would I go rebuild it natively? But the reason why it's my number 3 is because even if there wasn't native web components to go to, this would not be true next week or next month or next year. React's got some staying power, but even with as good as jQuery was, it lasted about a decade. jQuery UI tried to ramp up, but it couldn't quite catch on. But this is not going to last. React. It wouldn't surprise me though if when the final web standards and the W3 specifications for native web components is pretty solid and supported by all the browsers. It wouldn't surprise me one bit if you could take JSX and boom, here's my native components. So that might come, that might happen. So it might not be as much work to get from a React to a native app. And now my top 3 reasons to use native web components. Interestingly enough, my number 1 reason came from this dumb guy I follow on Twitter. He said, maybe switching to JavaScript Framework of the Week, it will compensate for my lack of actual JavaScript knowledge. So it's really, really cool to know and understand the platform you're on. And I think a lot of us have to learn that. As web developers, it's pretty much sink or swim. You either know it or you're going to have a lot of pain. But lifespan is another really, really good reason to go with a native web component, because I need to speed up. I'm running out of time. But really, I want to get to the demo so you can see how when you build a native web component, it works within the environment that all the other components that you're used to. So you have to learn the life cycle of everything that you've already been using way better, because now you have to build the life cycle of everything you've been using. But you're doing it in such a way that you can extend the stuff that's already there. Like say you have this button that you need to do something a little bit more. You don't have to write a whole directive with all this stuff. You could just take a button that already has all the button events and the disabled events and everything that the button knows how to do, and you could just say, I just want a picture on it, and I want to be able to put a picture on it, and so you add an attribute, that kind of thing. Interoperability, well again, since native web components have to work the same for what we build and what's already out there, it's just got to work everywhere, or the stuff or the div won't work. That would be a bummer. Though it will be nice to get rid of that div soup where you have just trees and trees of nested components. So we'll be able to do that. And portability. And of course, all of those are on top of the purple mountain majesties of web standards, and that's really great. We really need to learn the platform that we're using, and building a native web app, that's the best way to learn the platform. Finally, here's the demo that we're looking forward to. So here's the actual code. So I made okay. So that picture comes from here. So usually I will look at the image source, which is an attribute on this image meme element. But if there isn't one, I got to do something, and it's really nice when your components just always work no matter what. You should have defaults that just do something. Don't break because something's not there. But let's start at the top and go down. So has anyone used this template tag? These are supported even in IE. So you can use a tag called a template, and it's just a way of saying all the other stuff I put in this template, don't show it. Before that, we did dumb things like we'd put a script tag with stuff in it that was kind of a template, and we had to work around the limitations. But now we have a template tag, so you can give an ID, in this case image meme template, and it's just a div with an image and a text top and text bottom element. And the styles are paired with that. So these styles are what makes this text look like that and stuff, which is really great because you don't have to worry about name spacing and stuff as much now. So this package comes as all together. And then this is the class syntax where you can see I'm extending. This is the lightest way. Everything comes from HTML element. That's a span comes from here. A div is basically this plus a little bit more like the block layout, that kind of thing. So start with the minimal base element, and in your class you can do some kind of initialization things in here, but I just put it there so you could see that you call the super first and then do your other stuff. Then there's the getters and setters for these three attributes. So I want to put attributes on here. The image source is an important one, so I could change that image. And then the text top, and then the text bottom. And then finally, there's an observed attributes function where you can return an array of the attributes, the named attributes in your native element that you want to watch. And what happens is anytime, like when the page first loads, it goes through this attribute changed callback because it's putting the initial values in there. And the way it works is it tells you the name of the attribute. So in this case, it's always going to be one of these three things because those are the only ones I'm watching. You could watch everything, but try and just watch the things that you really want to watch. And then if it happens to be image source, then I just use those getters and setters up there. Same with the other two. And the connected callback is when it first renders. And so what I just made this helper function, this draw function, I have to call it after changing the state, and I also have to call it after when it first draws. And it just comes in and checks. It first checks if the thing's already there. So it's looking for the image. If it's already there, then I just go get its shadow root and the things and the three parts of the element. And then otherwise I need to initialize it. So I clone it from the template. So the template clone is just that template that we were looking at earlier. Clone the template, put it in there, and then finally use those things that we defined in either case to set the values. That's it.
So you said you're cloning it. Is that for the repo?
No, it only does it the one time. Because if it's already there, it checked to see if it's there. If it's there, it doesn't need to do anything. Otherwise, if it's not there, it goes up to that template that was up at the top and says, hey, get everything in that template and put it on the page. So that's all that's doing. And so let's play around with it. Here it is. So with no values or no attributes defined, if I run that, hopefully it should do. It's kind of slow, so let me just go straight to I have some images out there. I think it's Waldo.jpg or something. Oh yeah. See, so I just changed the image source in this image meme thing, and now I have that. And say I want to change the text on the top or the bottom. Well, I wanted to kind of show how this is really a native component by using this JavaScript interval. It's just going to, every second, it's going to set the attribute. And you've probably done stuff like this in just against your like native divs or something. Maybe your link has to be localized, so you set some attribute somewhere. So we just call the set attribute on this on my meme. See the ID right there, my meme. So I put it in this meme object, and I just set the attribute of text top to up here. I set it to the counter. So let's just run it. See what happens. So you see how it's just behaving like we thought. And then when I set it back to nothing, it goes and renders with that default. So let's try something. And for this one, I'm going to just type right in here in the element itself. There. And there we go. Fully native, no frameworks. And so what do you think? Has anyone else, I'm curious who else here has done this, like built a, it's still, you work at Canopy, you three? So yeah, that's such a good question, because the stuff that's already out there is not bad, and it's out there, it's done and working. I'll go to my Easter analogy was that what if the basket, instead of putting all your eggs and the eggs being like components, if every egg was a React component and you built all your components in React and put them in that one basket, that's not good. But what if the basket was just the native web and the eggs were like the different frameworks, React and... Yeah, so I think, so the question is, right. So the question is, how do I handle state data and all the things that frameworks give us? Because, so when I first built my first native web component, I started building these helper functions that would, for binding the data. And then I realized I was writing Polymer. so Polymer is kind of like this glue that handles the binding with the kind of the familiar syntax, the curly brace syntax that we're used to. I don't know. I think eventually, so the beginning of this year, Polymer 2.0 came out. Maybe it's still in beta. And the framework shrunk drastically, and that's what should be happening. If Polymer could be nothing, it would be, but we still need it until all the browsers do the right thing, and we can just, because it's not like a problem that we haven't solved, right? You have a question?
Well, before the statement, so I've been using web components off and on for a long time. I found that the place I've drawn the line at is web components are really great for leaf nodes. And if you want to take the analogy of if you're a React developer and React Redux developer particularly, you have your connected components and your dumb components. Web components work really great as dumb components. And then so you can probably still use something to do data, like, data binding or connecting to state or whatever it is. But as a pure data component, web components work well in that space. There's still things.
Yeah, I can see that missing part of handling data. Maybe this will be the year that something pops up but right now that's Polymer. If you want to really have a web component app that works in all browsers with the polyfills and everything, however, why would you do this now? Because I already have a framework. So why switch to another framework? So yeah, we still have a little ways to go, but I put all these resource links. Google backs webcomponents.org, which is what I've been watching to see when the number of things on there and the usage beats React, because that's how we'll know that this one. But I don't think you can resist it, but I think it's coming. Just for that performance test that I did. React suffers from the WYSIWYG residue problem. There's something there even when the page is empty. Well, I don't want something there if it's empty. And the only way to get that is to go native. So that's it.